Welcome and good afternoon to the second part, to the afternoon session of the European Quality Assurance Forum 2020, totally online. For those of you who missed the morning, we already had two great sessions looking at flexible higher education and internal quality assurance in emergency situations. Earlier this morning, Tia was welcoming you. Now it's my turn. I'm Ronnie Heinze. I work for the German accreditation agency AQUAS, and I'm also a member of the EQAF program committee. And in this capacity, I welcome you for this afternoon. What is our topic for the next session? After looking at internal quality assurance, this afternoon we look at the external perspective of quality assurance in emergency situations. And I'm very happy to hand over to my colleague Rick Warning from the Danish Accreditation Institution to chair this session. Rick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. And a good afternoon to everybody. And as Ronnie just told, we will now turn our focus towards the external quality assurance in emergency situations. And the background for this session is that the complete lockdown of almost all European countries meant that the external quality assurance agencies also had to respond to a new situation and very quickly had to find answers to the question, what is the role of external quality assurance in an emergency situation, like a global pandemic, for example? And in this session, 3 quality assurance agencies from different parts of Europe will present their approaches to the crisis and the lessons learned. And I am very, very happy to present Esther Huertas. And Esther is head of the Quality Assurance Department in EQAF Catalunya in Barcelona. I'm also very happy to present Marie Gore, and she is Head of Tertiary Education Monitoring and Review at Quality and Qualifications in Ireland. And finally, but not least, I'm pleased to present Natalia Stukalo, and Natalia is Vice Head at the National Agency for Higher Education Quality Assurance in Ukraine. And it is for me such a pleasure to chair this session, and I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations, and hopefully many of you will have questions and comments which will contribute to make this session as dynamic and as engaging as possible. And I will take a few questions after each speaker, so please feel free to add questions during the presentations. Before we start, I have a few technicalities. During and after the presentation, you can write questions and comments, and you can do that in the Q&A section, the Q&A tab in the right side of your screen. And I will see the questions and I will read them for the presenters who will respond. So please feel free to pop all the questions you have. If you want to interact, and I can see that you're already doing that, thank you for that. You can use this chat function, and you can also address more technical problems or technical issues there. Another technicality is that this session is recorded. And it will later be available at the EUA YouTube channel, and just go to youtube.com and search for European University Association and then the name of the session, and then you will find it. But all of you who are already in here will also receive a link afterwards, and then you can find it that way. And finally, you can also download different kinds of materials from the handout tab. I think as a warm-up, it's interesting to get an impression of who we are, because we can't really see each other. We are sitting all over Europe behind our screens. And therefore, I will invite you to respond to 2 poll questions. And in a short while, a pop-up window will appear on the screen, and please answer the questions. And the first question is, do you work in internal quality assurance or external quality assurance? So please do your voting. I think we can close the poll. And I am just waiting to have the result. it's almost 50-50. A little bit more than half of us are in internal quality assurance, and a little less is in external quality assurance. So it's a mixed group. And we have prepared one more question for you, and it will appear in the pop-up in a few seconds, I guess. Have you been involved in online external quality assurance processes during the COVID-19 crisis? And you have 3 different answers to choose from. You're still voting, there's still activities I can see. I think it's more or less that. We can close the poll. And I am just waiting to see the results. Oh, 44% of us have given the answer yes, have been involved, and 70% will be in the nearest future, and 39% haven't been and are not planning to be engaged in external quality assurance processes. So we will go on to the presentations, and I will now leave the floor to the first presenter, which is Esther, and welcome, Esther.
Sorry, I don't know what is happening with my slides. Okay, right now. Okay, so thank you very much, Rikke. Well, this presentation has the main aim to explain the strategy of ACU Catalunya, of the Quality Assurance Agency in Catalonia during the pandemic period. And once the Spanish government approved the state of emergency, ACU Catalunya provided a quick response from the internal and external point of view. In such a way, ACU activated for the very first time its contingency plan, as it was important that the agency continues with its activity to provide services to the society and to the higher education system. More importantly, the agency provided quick answers to the doubts raised by higher education institutions, and also in order to safeguarding the students' rights. Before moving further on the details of the strategy of the agency, I would like to focus on the 3 different moments we found this year. At the beginning of 2020, universities were doing their regular teaching. Then we've got the pandemic and the approval of the state of emergency. As a consequence, higher education institutions have to move very quickly to work in a context of an emergency remote teaching, which is a temporary shift of instructional delivery due to crisis circumstances. Right now, higher education institutions are working in the exceptional teaching moment. This means that there's an adaptation of the teaching and learning process, which is limited in time. It doesn't mean that on-campus universities, the traditional universities, are going to change their behavior and transform into online universities. And besides, there was a need to define a new concept of mode of delivery to differentiate from distance learning. It is important to say that higher education institutions in Catalonia reached a different agreement to finalize the last course and to determine different academic measures for the present course. Which are the main elements that we have to pay attention in this exceptional teaching moment? When talking about the teaching and learning process, institutions have to guarantee the same learning outcomes. There should be a coherence between the pedagogical model, the teaching methodology, and the assessment model. Teaching staff should be trained on this new scenario, and institutions should publish clear information on changes. There should be an adaptation of resources, and student support should be customized too. Institutions should pay attention to internships and final projects. Those changes should be recorded and monitored by higher education institutions and should follow the European standards and guidelines. From the external assessment point of view, universities must inform about non-permanent changes at their annual monitoring report, providing evidences of the adapted syllabus, an analysis of the acquisition of pretended learning outcomes, and provide feedback of students and professors. Permanent changes in programs should follow the standard procedures. There are 4 main areas when talking about ACU Catalunya strategy. And as I have said at the beginning of this presentation, ACU must continue with the review procedures. We were aware that the time limits for submission and for resolution of external evaluation procedures should be adapted during the emergency period of time. It was agreed that meetings should be organized in an online way, and the procedures were adapted in order to be carried out in a remote way. At the beginning of this year, the agency had planned 84 site visits for the accreditation of more than 120 programs delivered in the Catalan higher education system. We could carry out 13 visits before the health emergency, and in 15 days, ACU developed a flexible protocol to ensure the continuity and quality of the review procedure. The agency worked together with the higher education system to adjust plans, and we came up with a new agenda consisting of 49 virtual site visits for 100 programs. It was also agreed to postpone the accreditation of health science programs as they were covering some public health needs due to COVID. In the transition from in-person to online visits, ACU Catalunya have learned some aspects that have been included in the procedure of a virtual site visit. It is important to provide panel and stakeholders involved with clear and concise instructions. Review panel needs training and support. For every visit, there is an ACU staff member as a backup for technical or procedural questions. Agenda should be adapted, and we recommend avoiding full-day work sessions and split the visit in 2 or 3 days, having breaks of 15 minutes between meetings and not exceeding 10 persons interviewed in each session. A video conferencing platform is mandatory. A robust and easy-use system has been selected with features that meet the needs of the virtual visit design, such as a waiting room for the attendees. It is important to guarantee the confidentiality, and recording is not allowed. Higher education institutions can present further evidences when required by peers through email. From the experience gained in these months, we can point out a set of general challenges associated with the external evaluation processes in this scenario, such as the management of uncertainty, safeguarding the rights of students, ensuring the same level of quality assurance, the excess of workload of teachers, and the loss of personal contact in review and evaluation procedures. At an agency level, we can list some of the challenges ACU has and is facing now. That would be responding quickly, precisely, and with flexibility to the needs and requirements of the Catalan university system, establishing effective communications with universities and other higher education institutions, designing an effective quality assurance review procedure that avoids an excess workload, flexibility to replan when needed, quality assurance procedures quickly and smoothly, and site visits to facilities. And I would like to share a final thought with all of you. After some months immersed in this virtual mode, we can affirm that virtual site visit works very similarly to one on the ground. At the beginning, universities were a little bit skeptical with the new format and concerned about its possible negative impact on the result of program accreditation. After having held at least one virtual site visit in every university, in the system, this perception has changed, and this is a good thing since virtual visits seems to have come to stay. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Esther. It wasn't even necessary for me to keep the time, so thank you for that. We have time for a few questions, and I have one in the chat or in the Q&A, which I will raise to you. Did your agency already have a contingency plan before the crisis, or was it created as a result of it? Did you have like an emergency plan before?
Yeah, we've got a contingency plan before, but the thing is that it doesn't include a pandemic element. So we've got this contingency plan due to IT problems or types like that, things like that, but nothing related to lockdowns or stopping the activities in the way we have been organizing all our activities.
Okay, thank you. In your presentation, you mentioned that your agency had to meet the institutions with some kind of flexibility. Could you just elaborate a little bit on what kind of flexibility is necessary in a situation like this?
Okay. The first thing is that we try to be flexible on the moment to have the site visit. So we have to postpone some of the site visits. Universities have to be prepared for this new scenario. Okay, this is one thing. And from more practical, from the assessment point of view, I would say, there are some elements that we ask for more flexibility when doing the assessment. For example, not asking so many evidences. So we ask the peers to go for the really key important things. And of course, there's something important with health science programs. And here we would accept, for example, when organizing the internships, these emergency internships that are doing nurseries or doctors.
Okay, thank you. I can see many or more good questions in the Q&A, but I think I will leave them for later. And then I will invite the next presenter, Marie. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rike. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just waiting for the slides to appear. Just go back to the start on these. Okay, there we are. I hope everybody can see those. And I suppose just to acknowledge that this is a piece of work that we've undertaken in collaboration with the Institute of Technology in Carlow. So to acknowledge our colleagues there, in particular David Tenerife and Yvonne Kavanagh, who I think may have linked into the webinar. So afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be presenting on behalf of KQI and colleagues, and the purpose really of this presentation is to present the outcomes and findings from our evaluation of our first virtual institutional review process, which we undertook last June. There's no need to go into the background of this. I think, as Rike had mentioned at the outset, we're all very familiar now with the background and the events which moved us into this into the virtual platform for our external quality assurance processes. So in conducting this evaluation, we wanted to address a number of questions. A fundamental question, which was concerning us because this was the first virtual review processes that we had conducted, was whether conducting an institutional review virtually impacted on the efficacy of the institutional review process. And I suppose it was very much a pilot process in collaboration with the institution who were willing to go ahead. Their review had initially been deferred or postponed. It was due to be conducted in March of last year. So the decision to go ahead, I suppose, with the virtual process was a little bit of an experiment for us at that time. I know we've all become much more accustomed to that since then. So that was the fundamental question. And a number of supplementary questions then were addressed in the survey. And some of these were covered actually this morning in this morning's session, and particularly session 2, in terms of the internal quality assurance approaches, and that is how the virtual institutional review impacted on both the review team members' ability to engage and collaborate, and indeed the students and stakeholders' capacity to engage. And indeed the presentation from Stefan on their findings through Sparks were very interesting, because I think they echo, you'll find as I go through the presentation, they very much echo our findings in this, which again is, I suppose, is reassuring. Just to beg your pardon, the last question there then are some of the design elements, and Esther has already covered some of these also in their experiences. So our methodology, we have piloted our virtual review in June of this year. We conduct some focused sessions with both the institution and with the review team. We did some detailed survey with the review team and the institution representatives and a broad range of stakeholders that had been involved in the review, both from students to the external stakeholders, the industry, and other providers, vocational education training providers, all that had been part of the review process. We did a specific focus group with students to get their feedback on their participation in the process. And when the report was finished, we did a comparability analysis between the outcomes and arising from this review and the report and other similar institutional review reports. So just to address some of our findings, and the first in the survey results, and I suppose we were really reassured in the feedback. Our survey, in the survey, we asked participants about the specific questions about the efficacy and efficiency of the virtual review process. And our survey, as I mentioned earlier, was sent to a wide range of stakeholders. And participants were also asked for comments and suggestions in how we might improve the virtual process. The feedback was really positive, and you can see some of the specific survey results here. So participants were, asked whether they were able to, whether the process enabled effective engagement with the review team during the online process, and the majority of participants confirmed that they were able to engage with the review team. The review process allowed open and honest discussion, and 97% of the stakeholders who engaged with the survey expressed confidence in the efficacy of the process. And so this was really reassuring for us in this first virtual process that we undertook. So some of the design elements in what worked well, and this was part of our supplementary questions in confirming, I suppose, the efficacy and confidence in the process. We really, I suppose, in analysing the feedback, wanted to ascertain what worked well in terms of the design element. And really, it was a detailed advanced planning and preparation is essential, both with the institution and with the review team. So we had much more frequent and shorter meetings with the review team prior to the virtual visit. And indeed, we are commencing our third virtual review next week. And our experience has been similar, a lot more, I suppose, advanced planning, frequent meetings with the review team. We had lead and supporting reviewers for each session, and a list of targeted questions which were devised by the review team in advance. And it's not to say that they didn't stray or that they had to adhere to those questions, but it certainly gave a very structured framework for the review team to work within. In the devising the schedule, we built in a weekend break, and I suppose it was mentioned, I think, at the again in the session 2 this morning about the digital fatigue, which I think we all can suffer from. So we were very mindful of that in the review schedule. We had daily morning meetings with the institutional coordinator, and that preempted any problems or any issues that might have arisen. Our colleagues in the National Student Engagement Programme, NSTEP, were I suppose, a key collaborator in the process, and they conducted an advanced briefing for students on the process, and that really, we had really positive feedback from that. And indeed, I think in your handouts there is an overview of that process. We had advanced briefing for staff and students, which was undertaken by the institution. And the institution put together a central repository, institutional tour, and virtual media. So I suppose looking at different ways that the review team and indeed stakeholders could engage. I'm very mindful. See, right, give time for one more minute. So some lessons learned. Having a dedicated virtual space for the review team, so to make sure that there wasn't people didn't go into the wrong meeting, and some mechanism for the team to engage or communicate with each other, some informal mechanism. And our team they set up a WhatsApp that they could engage with each other through the meeting. I mentioned frequent private review team meetings. We actually scheduled those through the review as well, and we had a more condensed timeline. And again, that was important to manage that digital fatigue element. There is a need for contingency planning. I think we saw that ourselves this morning for technology failings. So we did learn that from our first review, and we've built some of those steps into our current review since. And we put together some meeting protocols and guidelines for stakeholders. And again, I think they will be shared in your handouts. One learning, I suppose, just to finish up on, was that time zones did impact on the schedule. So our review team chair was based in the States, and that meant we were not able to start the review sessions until later, kind of early afternoon. So it meant that they ran until later in the evening. So I suppose it was a very practical operational consideration in assigning or in selecting reviewers for future reviews. That was one of the lessons for us. So thank you for that, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Marie, for this really interesting presentation. There are so many questions coming in, and I have one specific for you here. It says, how do you guarantee confidentiality of interviews in online interviews? Have you considered that?
Well, when you say confidentiality, it was the meeting process, the sessions through the review were by invite only. So it was only those stakeholders that were invited to the session that could access those sessions. So I suppose the individual students, and that would be the same as an on-site review. Everybody in the meeting hears the comments from everybody else at that meeting, and that was the same. But those outside the meeting room were not able to access the meeting room. So there is, I suppose, in the preparatory stage, setting up all of those meetings, and that administration takes a lot of advanced planning. And I suppose from our team's perspective, there was a lot more work in that advanced planning administration. So each session had a separate invite, a separate team's invite. And we, I suppose, as the agency, we also managed the admitting participants to the meeting, so we could see who was coming into each of the meetings. And again, I suppose we maintained that operational oversight of admitting to the meetings.
Thank you. There are many questions, and luckily we have a good time after the third presenters, and I think I will invite Natalia to start your presentation. Welcome, Natalia. Thank you.
Thank you. So, greetings from Ukraine, National Agency for Higher Education Quality Assurance. So let us start the presentations from the very beginning. Just a second, I'm sorry. Yeah, so my presentation is devoted to the role of the quality assurance agencies in response to pandemic challenges. So, of course, there is evidence that worldwide COVID-19 quarantine influenced the universities all over the world, and there are different factors which should be considered: non-perfect technologies, the lack of remote teaching methodology, also some issues with the university management system. So all this influenced the universities, and it's also important to note that both internal and external quality assurance have moved to the remote mode. So universities now have increasing demand for the consultancy services, and the methodological support, and the best practices sharing. So this study conceptual background is based on different academic sources, but also it considers ESG 2015 and as well as the EU4 group statement that ESG remain valid and relevant in the current higher educational landscape. The aims of the study are shown on the next slide, and this is qualitative study based on case study and phenomenology method. And we have conducted interviews with 34 respondents who are rectors and vice-rectors of the state and private different size and different specialization universities from different regions of Ukraine. And also we have reviewed some practices of quality assurance agencies all over the world, which were available online. So the first finding is the consultancy and supportive function is becoming of the great importance for the stakeholders in emergency times. It was noted that universities and other stakeholders need additional support, recommendations to address current challenges. It's also important that social media tools like webinars, training, Q&A sessions, their importance increased, and also consultative support for policy development and decision making in the universities is also important. From case, from our agency case, we have conducted some different social media projects like NACA comments, NACA advices, NACA Q&A sessions. So we have also other examples from the international practice. For instance, we noted series of ENCA webinars and also other organizations like EQAF, ENCA, Chair. They conducted thematic webinars. The next finding is quality assurance agencies demonstrate flexibility in emergency situations, and it means that the agencies put a lot of efforts into development of new procedures, adoption of care process to remote teaching conditions, and also making legislative initiatives to legitimize the new procedures. For instance, our agency has already completed more than 500 remote accreditations. So we conduct them in approximately the same way as Esther and Marie presented, and we also noted from the open sources that some other agencies have also conducted their remote accreditations and have good experience and best practices there. Well, it's also important to note that universities highly appreciate support and leadership of the quality assurance agencies during emergency situations, and they support such initiatives. It was noted that external quality assurance innovations, for instance, remote site visits, they stimulate development of the university's internal quality assurance systems and also adoption and implementation of the new technology. So the evidence of multiplication effect was seen here. We have some cases of Ukrainian universities which have implemented the new progressive electronic systems. They developed apps for to be used by their students and the teachers. Some universities developed hybrid e-management system, conducted online open lecturing. So there are a lot of good practices which which could be shared by the universities and which were done in response to emergency situation and remote external quality assurance. The final finding is that quality assurance agencies become platforms for best practices sharing. And it's not only about university management practices, but also quality of study program and teaching and learning. For instance, our agency have developed the project which is called NACA School of Quality, where different universities share their practice, and also we have a NACA collection of best practices, and we also noted that some other agencies have also used this practice. To sum up our findings, it's so the role of quality assurance agencies is split at different levels now. So at institutional level, at national level, developing quality framework and societal role. Also international level, the cross-border quality assurance and internationalization of higher education. But as for consulting and platforms for best practices, as well as enhancing culture of quality, it is meta level, which relates to all three previous levels. And finally, there are some pictures from our projects and from our activities of the agency. And it's important to know that flexibility, adaptability, supportiveness, consulting, and leadership are becoming the key characteristics of quality assurance agencies in emergency situations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for a really interesting presentation. I am just curious to ask you, what will the extended role of the QA agencies in Ukraine during the pandemic mean for the future role of the agencies in relation to the higher education institution? Do you think there will be maybe some kind of a new balance between control of the internal quality assurance and consultancy and supportive functions? Will it change?
Well, I think there will be a new balance. I mean, as role of agencies, consultancy role and supportive role is growing, so it will create some kind of new balance. Because, for instance, the recent example from our practice, last week we announced a new series of webinars for higher educational institutions. And within 2 days, we got more than 3,000 requests to participate in this webinar. So it relates to universities from different regions, but all of them are Ukrainian universities. So a lot of people, 1,000 people, would like to hear something new and to get support, to ask questions, and to get these responses. So I think there will be a new balance indeed.
Okay, thank you. I think we will start the next part of this session, where all of the three presenters will be on the screen as a panel and will respond to questions from you. And I have a lot of questions to pick from, and thank you so much. And you're voting, and it helps me to pick out the questions you find the most interesting, and that's a great help. Thank you so much. I can see that many of the questions are circulating around the theme of will this continue after the pandemic? What are the interests of the agencies in continuing this? What are the interests from the institutions and from other stakeholders? So what do you think? Is this going to be the new normal, or will you go back to the way it used to be, or is it going to be like a hybrid of new and old experiences? And what are the interests in this? Esther, will you start?
Yes, thank you. Well, in our opinion, there would be like an hybrid model. So there could be a new way of doing things from the external point of view, especially when we are moving or doing the second rounds of accreditation of program or institution. So maybe we can think in another way and simplifying the process. And this could be done combining the virtual visit, some virtual interviews with institution. And it is also, it's in the chat. Someone has, I think it's Brian McGuire that has already written down, but this is the idea. We have to differentiate those programs that has problems or that they haven't been visited before, from the ones that are the second or the third time that are visited and they've got good results, etc. So this could be something that we can explore and move on.
Yes. Yeah, Marie, please.
Yeah, I would agree. And my colleague, Brian McGuire, I think, has used the phrase part of the toolbox of quality assurance agencies. And I think it will become enriching the toolbox of agencies. So it will enrich, I suppose, the mechanisms that we have. I was interested in the feedback from the presentation session 2 this morning from learners. And it very much, I think, echoed our experience that some the learners felt that it enhanced their engagement, that it was a less intimidating process. We had a very good focus group with learners, and they didn't, some very practical issues, like they didn't have to travel, learners in one campus didn't have to travel to the main campus for the review. So it was very interesting that the feedback from our Spanish colleagues reflected very much our feedback, that this process actually enhanced their capacity to engage in the process. So in the younger, I suppose, well, not all learners are necessarily the younger generation, but certainly of the younger generation, their capacity to engage in digital technologies, it's very much part of all our lives now, I think. So perhaps not a new normal, but certainly part of our expanding toolbox as we go on.
Okay, thank you, Marie. And Natalia? Yeah, Natalia, please.
Yeah, I agree that it will be some kind of hybrid. Will be some kind of hybrid model, and actually we got some feedback from our stakeholders, and including it was also survey of among our experts, and almost 80% confirmed that we should keep as an option virtual site visit. So it's a lot of people and stakeholders are satisfied with the new approach.
Okay, thank you. I have a new question here, and it says, did you have previous experiences with online reviews before COVID-19 that you could draw on? And what are the most common concerns among the institutions? I don't know if any of you, did any of you have previous experiences? Yeah, Marie? No?
In our process in terms of review, no, we didn't have experience of any virtual review process. I think I mentioned that, which is why we undertook the survey, and we are following up with more evaluation on our second review. So, when we followed very much the processes of external agencies with the Onsite visits. So I think it's, again, as was mentioned this morning, even though this technology has been around for quite some time, we, I suppose, haven't embedded it within our processes. I think there are still concerns. Look, I mean, you lose the face-to-face, you lose that. There's nuances that bring some of the informal conversations that may go on between a review team, over lunch and coffee. So it's trying to find spaces for the team to engage. I think outside of the formal engagement is a challenge, and for the review team to develop its own dynamic. That's obviously much easier to do in a face-to-face setting. So I suppose that human contact, I think, is still and is very important. So that, I mean, we're all, I think, very aware of what we lose also with the virtual processes.
Yes. Yes, Esther, please.
Yeah, it's the same as Marie has already said. The legal context established that there has to be a face-to-face site visit. So that's something that maybe we have to look at, and maybe we have to change this legislation, those standards that establish that it's mandatory to have an on-site visit. And that's why we've got some experiences with some committees that they were taking some decisions, doing some virtual meetings, but nothing to do with these external review procedures. And in relation with the concerns or worries of the institutions, I have already said some of them.
Yeah.
First of all, the results. But after they have realized that the results are the same and the functioning is what it was almost the same as a face-to-face site visit, we have a lot of questions about the people attending to the audiences, to the meetings, because before they have the control of all the students attending, or not the control, but they know all the students that are attending to the meeting, etc. And right now they don't know this information, so they want to check if all the people that they have to attend to the meeting was there. So we usually send back a message to them telling them everything was fine, don't worry, other people attend. That's right.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here, and it's about the students' rights in this situation, being sent home behind the screen, having all teaching online. How can you, as an external quality assurance agency and managing external quality assurance, work with safeguarding the students' rights? Are there any specific experiences with the problems of that? Please, yeah, Marie.
I mean, I suppose the whether it's student maybe rights is perhaps not the word I would use so much, but I mean the student support, the learner engagement, and the mechanisms by which the institutions have had to adapt that, and we've heard some of that this morning in the presentations, all form part of the our monitoring and review process. So the mechanisms which, and we've heard it here from Natalia and Esther, the different approaches that institutions took. So I think the ESG, the guidelines remain, the capacity for students to engage, to participate, to support students. The nature of the supports may be different, and still in some institutions evolving because it moved from a very fast situation in the earlier months. Now, I suppose, a more strategic approach by institutions to planning how to engage with students. But in our dialogues with the institutions, they are, and we are asking the questions about, are they monitoring students who are disengaging? How are they monitoring? How are they following up on students who are disengaging, whether it's because of connectivity issues? So I think it's a different set of it's different measures then, but the guidelines and I suppose the expectations remain the same.
Yeah. Natalia, please. Natalia?
Yeah, from our experience, our student experts, they are quite actively involved into the discussion with students, and during their online site visits, they ask them and they try to understand how what is the environment for them during the online remote learning, and what are the challenges. So our expert students actually play a very important role in this regard. So during the online site visit, they are very active in this regard.
Okay, thank you. And Esther?
Yes, I would like to add something. And for us was really important to establish which are the limits, which are the things that universities can do, which are the things that they cannot do. And those criteria that they were agreed by the system was prepared jointly with the agency. So we provide them with information and the recommendations of the strategy they have to follow during this emergency period. So that's something important.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here for all of you. And do you also see these new approaches as a way to get more international experts into your panels? Are there new possibilities in this?
Yeah, I think this is a way of simplifying everything, simplifying the fact that normally international experts have to travel from places that are far away from the country, so the agenda maybe are more complicated. So it's easy to have them involved in the project.
Okay. Yes, Marie?
Yeah, as I mentioned in our presentation, there can be complications with time zones. So I suppose it can bring restrictions in some jurisdictions that it's not practicable to bring an international expert. So it's a yes and no. There is more efficiencies perhaps in bringing them from some time zones, but it may be more restrictive than in other time zones.
Yes. Natalia, are you having international experts in your panels, and will it be easier with the digital format?
Well, currently we don't have, we have new agency, so we are working just 1 year, and but we're developing the mechanism how to involve. And actually, these online site visits, it opens some opportunities for us. So we are thinking how to use this, new chance to involve more international experts. So it is, task number 1 for us for the next year.
Okay, but I can't help thinking, now we have done these site visits for years, bringing experts, international, national experts together. Aren't we missing anything in doing this? It seems like it's like a heaven for site visits, this new digital way of doing it. I'm just curious, what do we miss?
I think the review team participated in these site visits for a lot of reasons, some from their own professional desire to network and meet colleagues and spend time with colleagues, and you perhaps miss some of that. So yes, the output and maybe it works very well, but from a review team member, that might be an interesting research to carry out to see, well, from a review team member, yes, you got the job done, but actually, I think one of our chairs at our last review said, well, it wasn't as much fun. So I suppose you didn't get to travel and you didn't get to spend meetings. So I think you miss that really good networking, making colleagues. So I think for the review team members themselves, that positive byproduct of the process may be lost.
Okay. Yeah, Esther?
And also with the contact with the university, when you have interviews and so on, you are missing the body language of people when they are expressing and talking and things like that. So this personal contact is the thing that experts and also for the agency we miss a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I can also see comments in the Q&A about this is become more environmental friendly and more cost effective and so on, but yeah, it has to be like a balance. That's what I hear. Yeah, Natalia, please. Natalia?
I just would like to add one point. From our from the feedback of our experts. Some of them say that we can hardly feel the spirit of the university. So it's, especially when experts evaluate art study programs or some kind of study programs which really need to bring you the spirit of the university. So sometimes they are missing the spirit of the university during online visits.
Yeah, And I also see some comments and questions here about if this can be that it can be like a competition between agencies if they are competing in a competing world, and maybe for accreditation procedures. So the financial pressure is high if we want to be able to compete and so on. And I think that's quite important perspectives as well. I just have to see if I have more questions. I think we have been pretty much around most of them. Let me see. Yeah. And you're welcome to comment on the Q&A section as well. And I can see that you're already interacting and answering questions over there, answering each other's questions. And I think time is about to running out, and we have a few minutes left. And I am
sorry, I see some comments there on infrastructure. More recently, but then previously, I think a response, which was our experience with our institution in Institute Technology Carlow, where they put together a virtual video. So how do you get to see the infrastructure? And somebody had mentioned, even a drone or using an iPhone or walking through video. So there are technology has really got endless potential in being creative in bringing the institution and that field of the institution both to the review team. And we have, I know in our colleagues in our accreditation unit of some of their panels have virtual dinners together to get the panel to know each other. We haven't done that with our review team, but might be, I don't know whether other agencies have, but for the kind of informal sessions, there are a lot of possibilities in that way.
Thank you so much for taking this question up, Marie. Somehow it skipped my eyes. I don't know why. There's just so many over there, but thank you for helping me with that.
I think it was the drone. That's interesting. I think it was the drone that got my eye.
Yeah, that's good to know. I think it's about to stop this session. Time is running out, and I hope, and I'm quite sure that all of us will leave this session with new knowledge and new inspiration. Unfortunately, I think it looks like we have to live with this COVID-19 for still some time. But I hope that all of you will leave this session with some new energy, new ideas, which make external quality assurance just as solid as ever, also in the time to come. If you're curious to know more about these really interesting and exciting presentation, I will turn your attention towards the extended video recordings of the presentations, which Natalia, Marie, and Esther has made, and you can find them on the YouTube channel, just like this recorded presentation. And I can just recommend to go and see them. They are absolutely fantastic. So please do that. And for me, it's a big thanks to all of you who joined the session. And I must be honest to say that even though we have heard so much about the good quality of digital meetings, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you face to face in the future. I think it's a little bit more cozy, actually. So hope to see you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Rika. Thank you for chairing and moderating the session, but also thanks to Esther, to Marie, to Natalia for your input. I think that was also very beneficial to see the geographic spread that we have in Europe, and to see you discuss common challenges, but also how equal sometimes responses and lines of thinking were, and how we as external quality providers reacted to that. Thank you also for all the participants who joined for the very lively discussion. I think when I was following the chat, I could really see that also in the digital format, interaction works. And how much also participants can interact with each other, but also putting the questions then to the table of the presenters. I think that was a great example and very lively. For all those of you who for today are very sad that this great discussion already ends, I can reassure you, the European Quality Assurance Forum will come back to your living room or to your kitchen or to your office tomorrow. Because the theme is so broad, flexible higher education, that there are other aspects that we still can look at. And tomorrow we'll look at micro-credentials, we'll look at student engagement, and also how quality assurance is shaping change. So I hope to see many of you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Brussels time. For today, that's it. Thank you for joining. And I hope that you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon, maybe with some of the less digital activities. Thanks for today. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you.